The emergency sirens wailed through the affluent neighborhood as two identical women stood triumphant, watching police cars surround a teenage boy who had done nothing but save lives. Their smug satisfaction would last exactly 47 seconds, until the body camera footage revealed the truth that would destroy everything they thought they knew about power, privilege, and the boy they'd just tried to destroy. The morning sun cast long shadows across Willowbrook Estates, where perfectly manicured lawns stretched between million-dollar homes like green carpets of suburban perfection. Marcus Chen adjusted his pool maintenance kit one final time before approaching the Blackwood residence, a sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion that dominated the corner lot with its pristine white stucco walls and red tile roof. At 17, Marcus had been running his pool service business for 2 years, saving every dollar for college while his mother worked double shifts at the hospital. His reputation in the neighborhood was spotless, literally and figuratively. The Blackwoods had hired him 3 months ago after their previous service had left their pool green and unusable during their daughter's sweet 16 party. Another day, another dollar, Marcus muttered to himself, wheeling his equipment through the side gate. The Blackwood property was his favorite stop, not because of the owners, whom he rarely saw, but because of the pool itself. It was a work of art. Infinity edge, built-in spa, surrounded by imported Italian marble that gleamed like fresh snow in the morning light. The pool house stood to his left, its French doors closed against the morning chill. Marcus had his own key to the equipment room, a privilege Mrs. Blackwood had granted him after he'd prevented a catastrophic pump failure that would have cost thousands in repairs. He was just beginning his pH tests when he heard voices approaching from the main house. 2 women emerged onto the expansive patio, and Marcus's heart sank slightly. The Harrison twins, Karen and Sharon, were Mrs. Blackwood's sisters, visiting from Phoenix for what had stretched into a 3-week stay. They were identical in every way that mattered. Platinum blonde hair styled in the same aggressive bob, designer athleisure wear that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly take-home, and an air of entitlement that preceded them like expensive perfume. "Oh, wonderful," Karen said loudly, making no attempt to lower her voice. "The pool boy is here." Marcus continued his work, having learned that engagement with the twins rarely ended well. They had a talent for turning casual conversation into interrogation, always probing for ways to establish their superiority. "Marcus, isn't it?" Sharon called out, settling into one of the cushioned lounge chairs. "Tell me, dear, do you have all the proper certifications for handling pool chemicals? Some of these substances can be quite dangerous in the wrong hands." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied evenly, checking his chlorine levels. "I'm certified by the National Swimming Pool Foundation and the state of California." Karen joined her sister, arranging her yoga mat with theatrical precision. "How thorough of you. Though I do wonder about insurance liability. If something were to happen, an accident, contamination, perhaps even something more serious, who would be responsible?" The question hung in the air like a threat wrapped in silk. Marcus had dealt with difficult clients before, but the twins operated on a different level. They weren't just entitled, they were calculating, always probing for weakness. "My business is fully insured and bonded," Marcus said, focusing on his skimmer. "Everything is documented and inspected regularly." "How reassuring," Sharon said, though her tone suggested anything but reassurance. "Though accidents do happen, don't they? Especially with teenagers. So impulsive, so unpredictable." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but he maintained his professional composure. He'd learned long ago that rising to their bait only gave them ammunition. The twins settled into their morning routine, synchronized yoga poses that seemed designed more for performance than actual exercise. Marcus continued his work methodically, testing water chemistry, cleaning the filters, and checking the automated systems that kept the pool pristine. It was during his routine safety inspection that he noticed it. a hairline crack in the glass panel that served as part of the pool house's structural wall. The crack ran from floor to ceiling, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. Marcus had been trained to spot such things. His mentor, an old-timer named Pete, had drummed into him that pool safety wasn't just about chemicals and filters. A pool is only as safe as its weakest point, Pete had said. Miss something small, and it becomes something catastrophic. Marcus approached the glass panel for a closer inspection, his trained eye following the crack's path. What he saw made his blood run cold. The crack wasn't superficial. It ran deep into the tempered glass, creating a structural weakness that could fail catastrophically under the right conditions. Worse, directly behind the glass panel was the pool's electrical system, the main control box that regulated everything from filtration to heating to the underwater lighting. If the glass failed, it would send thousands of gallons of chlorinated water directly into electrical systems that carried enough voltage to kill. "Ladies," Marcus called out, his voice carrying a new urgency. "I need you to step away from the pool area, please." Karen looked up from her downward dog pose with irritation. "Excuse me? There's a structural issue with the pool house glass. It's not safe to be in the immediate area until I can secure it." Sharon snorted with derision. "A structural issue? Really? This house was built by the finest contractors money can buy. I think you're being a bit dramatic, don't you?" Marcus pulled out his phone, switching to camera mode to document the crack. "I understand your skepticism, but I'm required to report safety hazards immediately. This crack in the glass could lead to catastrophic failure." "Required by whom?" Karen demanded, rising from her yoga mat with the predatory grace of a lioness sensing weakness. "You're the pool boy, not a structural engineer." "I'm certified in pool safety and hazard identification," Marcus replied, moving closer to examine the electrical panel positioning. "This crack, combined with the proximity to electrical systems, creates an imminent danger." The twins exchanged a look that Marcus caught in his peripheral vision, the kind of wordless communication that only twins seemed to master. In that moment, he realized they weren't just dismissing his concerns, they were actively hostile to them. "You know what I think?" Sharon said, approaching Marcus with deliberate steps. "I think you're trying to create a problem, so you can charge extra to fix it. It's the oldest scam in the book." Marcus stopped documenting and turned to face her fully. "Ma'am, I have absolutely no financial interest in this repair. I'm not a contractor. I'm legally obligated to report safety hazards, and I'm doing exactly that." "Legally obligated," Karen repeated mockingly. "How convenient. Tell me, Marcus, what would happen if we decided we didn't believe your little story? What if we decided that you were either incompetent or dishonest?" The threat was clear now, no longer wrapped in pleasantries. Marcus felt his heart rate increase, but his voice remained steady. "Then you'd be putting everyone who uses this pool at risk of serious injury or death." "Death?" Sharon laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "How absolutely dramatic. You know what I think is really happening here. I think you're in over your head, making wild claims to cover up your own incompetence." Marcus pulled out his certification cards and business license. "These document my qualifications. I've been maintaining pools safely for 2 years without a single incident. I'm telling you there is a clear and present danger here." Karen snatched the cards from his hands, examining them with exaggerated scrutiny. 17 years old. No college degree. No engineering background. And you want us to believe you can identify structural problems that trained professionals missed?" "Pool maintenance certification includes safety training," Marcus said, reaching for his cards. "I know what I'm looking at." But Karen held the cards away from him, sharing another meaningful look with her sister. "You know what, Marcus? I think we need a second opinion. Sharon, why don't you call the Blackwoods and let them know their pool boy is making wild accusations about their property?" "Excellent idea," Sharon said, pulling out her phone with theatrical flair. And perhaps we should also call the business licensing board. I'm sure they'd be very interested to know about a teenage contractor making false safety claims. Marcus felt the situation spiraling beyond his control, but his training kicked in. Safety first, everything else second. Ladies, please, look at the crack for yourselves. It's right here in the glass panel. He pointed to the hairline fracture, but both women refused to look, instead focusing on their phones with aggressive typing motions. What I see, Karen said without lifting her eyes, is a teenager trying to intimidate two successful women with scare tactics and false expertise. What I see, Sharon added, is someone who needs to be stopped before he hurts innocent people, with his incompetence. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. In his 2 years of business, his integrity had never been questioned. His reputation was everything. Without it, he had no business, no college fund, no future. But the crack in the glass remained, a silent threat that wouldn't disappear because two entities. The first police cruiser pulled into the circular driveway with controlled urgency, followed immediately by a second unit. Officer Rebecca Martinez stepped out of the lead vehicle, her 15 years of experience automatically cataloging the scene. Expensive neighborhood, well-maintained property, no visible signs of disturbance or violence. Her partner, Officer James Wu, emerged from the passenger side, his hand instinctively checking his body camera, a habit developed after 2 days. Many calls where initial reports bore no resemblance to reality. The twins approached the officers with practiced distress, Karen leading with Sharon providing theatrical support. "Thank God you're here," Karen breathed, one hand pressed to her chest as if her heart might give out. "We weren't sure what he might do next." Officer Martinez's trained eyes swept the scene, taking in the teenage boy standing by the pool equipment, hands visible, phone held openly, posture defensive rather than aggressive. Her internal alarm bells weren't ringing, but she'd learned to trust her instincts while following protocol. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Martinez. Can you tell me what happened here?" Karen launched into her narrative with the polish of someone who'd rehearsed it during the 5-minute wait. "We were doing our morning yoga when this young man became increasingly agitated and hostile. He started making wild accusations about our property, claiming there were dangerous problems that simply don't exist. He refused to leave when we asked him to," Sharon added, stepping forward with perfect timing. "He became belligerent and started taking pictures without permission. We felt genuinely threatened." Marcus felt the familiar weight of being judged before being heard, a sensation he'd experienced too many times in his 17 years. But he forced himself to remain calm, remembering his mother's advice. "Let your actions speak louder than your reactions." Officer Wu approached Marcus, while Martinez continued with the twins. "Son, what's your name?" "Marcus Chen. I'm the pool maintenance contractor for this property." Marcus held out his business cards and certifications. "I have a 3-month service contract with the homeowners, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood." Wu examined the documentation while activating his body camera with a discreet tap. "These look legitimate. Can you tell me what happened here this morning?" Marcus chose his words carefully, knowing they were being recorded. "I was conducting my routine safety inspection when I discovered a structural hazard, a crack in the pool house glass panel that poses an immediate danger to anyone using the pool area." "A structural hazard?" Wu's eyebrows rose slightly. At 28, he'd seen enough false emergency calls to recognize the pattern, but something about the kid's demeanor suggested genuine concern rather than scam artistry. "Yes, sir. The crack runs floor to ceiling in the tempered glass panel directly adjacent to the main electrical systems. If it fails, it could cause electrocution or worse." Marcus gestured toward the pool house. "I tried to explain the danger to the ladies, but they interpreted my safety concerns as some kind of threat." Meanwhile, Martinez was getting an increasingly dramatic version of events from the twins. He was taking pictures of our property. Without permission, Karen insisted. When we questioned his authority, he became aggressive and started making threats. What kind of threats? Martinez asked, her pen poised over her notepad. Sharon jumped in seamlessly. He said people would get hurt if we didn't listen to him. The way he said it, it sounded like he was planning to make sure they got hurt. Martinez's expression remained neutral, but internally she was noting the inconsistencies. The kid didn't look or act like someone who'd been making threats. His body language was textbook non-aggressive, hands visible, feet planted, but not in. Fighting stance, voice calm and respectful. "Officer Martinez," Marcus called out, having overheard the conversation. "Would it be possible for you to examine the structural issue I identified? I can show you exactly what I'm talking about." Karen stepped between Marcus and the officer with theatrical alarm. "Don't let him manipulate you. This is exactly what he was doing to us, trying to create false emergencies to justify his presence here." But Martinez had caught something in the exchange that made her pause. The kid wasn't asking them to take his word for anything. He was asking them to look for themselves. Scam artists typically relied on pressure and urgency, not evidence and documentation. "Ma'am, I'd like to take a look at what he's referring to," Martinez said diplomatically, "just to complete our report thoroughly." "There's nothing to see," Sharon protested. "He's making it all up. This house was built by the finest contractors in California. The idea that some teenager could spot problems that professionals missed is absolutely ridiculous." Wu joined the group, having completed his preliminary interview with Marcus. "The young man has proper licensing and insurance. His story is that he discovered a safety hazard and was trying to report it when the situation escalated." "His story," Karen repeated with venomous emphasis. "Of course it's a story. He's trying to cover up his aggressive behavior by creating imaginary problems." Martinez made a decision that would prove more significant than anyone realized in that moment. "I'm going to examine the alleged hazard. Officer Wu, please keep everyone in visual contact while I take a look." She approached the pool house with Marcus, who pointed to the crack in the glass panel with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was talking about. "There," Marcus said, his finger tracing the air near the hairline fracture. "It starts at the base and runs all the way to the ceiling. You can see it more clearly if you angle your perspective like this." Martinez followed his guidance, and her breath caught slightly. The crack was real, subtle, but unmistakably present. More concerning was its proximity to what appeared to be a significant electrical panel. "How did you spot this?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Training," Marcus replied simply. "My mentor taught me that pool safety isn't just about chemicals. Water and electricity are a deadly combination. Any structural weakness near electrical systems has to be treated as an emergency." Martinez pulled out her own phone and began photographing the crack from multiple angles. "Has this been reported to the homeowners?" "I was in the process of documenting it when the situation began," Marcus said. "The ladies interpreted my safety concerns as some kind of scam." Behind them, the twins were becoming increasingly agitated, as they watched the officer taking the imaginary problems seriously. "What are you doing?" Karen demanded, marching over with Sharon in tow. "There's nothing wrong with that glass. This is exactly what we were talking about. He's manipulating you just like he tried to manipulate us." Martinez turned to face the twins, her expression professional but firm. "Ma'am, there is indeed a crack in this glass panel. It may or may not represent a significant hazard, but it definitely exists." "That's impossible," Sharon said flatly. "You're mistaken." The certainty in her voice gave Martinez pause. In her experience, innocent mistakes were usually accompanied by uncertainty, not adamant denial. People who were genuinely confused typically looked for clarification, not battle. "Ma'am, would you like to examine it yourself?" Both twins refused simultaneously, which struck Wu as odd. If someone was telling you there was no problem with your property, wouldn't you want to verify that for yourself? "We don't need to examine anything," Karen said imperiously. "We know our property, and we know there's no problem. What we have here is a teenager trying to create problems where none exist, and two police officers being manipulated by his performance." The word performance hung in the air like an accusation, and Martinez felt the dynamic shift. This wasn't just about a pool maintenance issue anymore. This was about credibility, authority, and who had the right to define reality. "Ladies," Wu interjected diplomatically, "we're simply gathering all the facts. The young man has legitimate credentials. The homeowners have contracted his services, and there does appear to be some kind of structural issue that warrants attention." "Warrants attention from whom?" Sharon demanded. "From actual professionals, not teenage wannabes who think they know better than everyone else." Marcus felt the familiar sting of age discrimination, the assumption that being 17 automatically made him incompetent, regardless of training, certification, or track record. But he also recognized the trap being laid. If he defended himself too vigorously, he'd be labeled aggressive. If he remained passive, he'd be seen as guilty. "Officers," Marcus said quietly, "I have Mrs. Blackwood's phone number. She can verify my employment and my authority to conduct safety inspections on this property." "Don't you dare call Linda," Karen snapped, her composure cracking for the first time. "She's dealing with enough stress without some contractor trying to create problems." The slip was subtle but significant. Martinez caught it. Why would a pool contractor reporting a legitimate safety hazard create stress for the homeowner? Wouldn't most property owners want to know about potential hazards? "Ma'am, if this young man is under contract to maintain this pool, don't the homeowners have a right to know about potential safety issues?" "There are no safety issues," both twins said in unison, their synchronized response only highlighting how rehearsed their narrative had become. Wu was beginning to see the pattern clearly. The twins weren't just dismissing the kids' concerns, The police officers departed after documenting the structural hazard and filing their incident report, leaving behind a deceptively calm scene. Marcus completed his pool maintenance with mechanical precision, hyper-aware of the twins' presence on the patio. They had resumed their yoga routine with theatrical normalcy, but their synchronized movements carried the predatory patience of lionesses waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As Marcus packed his equipment, he caught fragments of their whispered conversation, words like reputation, consequences, and teach him a lesson floating across the morning air like poison on the wind. "Have a wonderful day, Marcus," Karen called out as he wheeled his equipment toward the gate, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We'll be sure to tell everyone about your dedication to safety." The emphasis on the word dedication made it sound like an accusation, and Marcus felt his skin prickle with unease. He nodded politely and left, but the feeling of being watched lingered long after the Blackwood gate closed behind him. What Marcus didn't know was that Sharon was already scrolling through her phone, accessing a network of connections built over decades of suburban social warfare. The twins had weaponized their privileged position in society, turning PTA meetings into intelligence operations and charity boards into power bases. "Patricia Hendricks first," Sharon murmured, dialing the number of Willowbrook Estates' unofficial social coordinator. "She needs to know about the dangerous situation we encountered this morning." The call connected on the second ring. "Sharon? Darling, how are you settling in at Linda's?" "Patricia, I'm calling because we had a terrifying experience this morning. Linda's pool contractor, just a teenager really, became aggressive and threatening when we questioned his work. We actually had to call police." Patricia's intake of breath was audible. "Police? Oh my goodness, what happened?" He was taking pictures of the property without permission, making wild claims about imaginary problems, and when we asked him to leave, he became hostile and intimidating. Karen and I genuinely feared for our safety. The story bore no resemblance to reality, but Sharon delivered it with the conviction of someone who'd convinced herself it was true. In the twins' minds, Marcus's refusal to be intimidated constituted aggression, his expertise became presumption, and his professionalism transformed into manipulation. "What's his company name?" Patricia asked, already reaching for her contact. "List. I need to make sure none of our neighbors hire him." "Chen Pool Services," Sharon said, knowing she was dropping a bomb into the suburban gossip network. "Patricia, I hate to spread negative information, but people need to know. This boy could be dangerous." Within an hour, Patricia had called 12 homeowners in Willowbrook Estates. Each conversation followed the same pattern: genuine concern mixed with social obligation to warn others, facts becoming more dramatic with each retelling, and Marcus's reputation crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. By noon, the story had evolved significantly. Marcus had supposedly demanded additional payment for unnecessary work, threatened the twins when they refused, and only backed down when police arrived. The crack in the glass, captured clearly in the police photographs, had been forgotten entirely, erased by the power of collective narrative. Marcus was blissfully unaware of the campaign being waged against him as he completed his afternoon appointments. His next 3 clients greeted him normally, their pools needed their standard maintenance, and he finished each job with his usual thoroughness. It felt like any other Tuesday, until his phone began ringing. The first call came at 2:47 p.m. "Marcus? This is Janet Morrison from Sunset Ridge. I'm calling to cancel our service contract, effective immediately." Marcus blinked, caught completely off guard. "Mrs. Morrison, may I ask why? Have you been unsatisfied with my work?" Well, I've heard some concerning things about your business practices. I think it's best if we part ways." "What kind of concerning things?" But the line had already gone dead. The second call came 15 minutes later, then a third. By 4 p.m., Marcus had lost 6 clients, representing nearly 40% of his business. Each caller was vague about their reasons, citing concerns and better alternatives without providing specifics. Marcus sat in his truck outside his final appointment of the day, staring at his phone in bewildered disbelief. In 3 hours, his carefully built reputation had been destroyed by whispers and half-truths, spread through social networks he didn't even know existed. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Honey, can you come home early? We need to talk." The drive home felt like traveling through quicksand. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, each more devastating than the last. When he pulled into their modest driveway, he found his mother waiting on the front steps with an expression he'd seen only once before, when his father had left. "Mom, what's wrong?" Dr. Elena Chen was a woman of few words and direct action, qualities that had served her well during 15 years in emergency medicine. She gestured for Marcus to sit beside her, then pulled out her tablet. "I received a call this afternoon from the hospital administration. Someone filed a complaint against me with the medical board, claiming I've been falsifying patient records and operating under the influence of controlled substances." Marcus felt the world tilt sideways. "That's insane. You're the most honest person I know." "The complaint is anonymous, but it's detailed enough to trigger a formal investigation. They've suspended me pending review." Elena's voice remained steady, but Marcus could see the tremor in her hands. 23 years of spotless service, and now I'm fighting for my career. "Mom, this has to be connected to what happened this morning." Elena looked at him with sharp attention. "What happened this morning?" Marcus told her everything: the crack in the glass, the twins' hostility, the police call, and the mysterious client cancellations. As he spoke, Elena's expression grew darker. "Those women called the medical board," she said with quiet certainty. "They're attacking you through me." "But how did they even know where you work?" Elena pulled up a browser on her tablet. "Social media, public records, basic research. If someone wants to hurt you and has the time to investigate, they can find pressure points. She showed him the screen, which displayed his business website. In the About section, he'd mentioned that his mother was a dedicated healthcare professional who'd inspired his own commitment to helping others. A simple Google search of Elena Chen emergency medicine had led directly to her hospital affiliation. "They're going after our livelihood," Marcus said, the full scope of the attack becoming clear. "Not just mine, yours too." "Strategic destruction," Elena confirmed grimly. "They're not just trying to punish you for this morning. They're trying to destroy your future entirely." Marcus's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed the business licensing board. "Mr. Chen, this is David Walsh from the California Business Licensing Division. We've received several complaints about your business practices and need to schedule an investigation." "What kind of complaints?" "Allegations of fraudulent safety claims, unlicensed electrical work, and customer intimidation. These are serious charges that could result in the revocation of your business license." Marcus met his mother's eyes, seeing his own realization reflected there. The twins weren't just angry, they were systematic. They'd identified every pillar supporting Marcus's life and were methodically destroying each one. "Mr. Walsh, I'd like to request copies of these complaints and the right to respond formally." "Of course. We'll be in touch within 48 hours to schedule your hearing." After the call ended, mother and son sat in silence, processing the magnitude of what they faced. Elena spoke first. "They made one mistake." "What's that?" "They assumed we'd collapse under pressure." Elena's voice carried the steel that had guided her through countless medical emergencies. "They're about to learn that attacking my son was the worst decision they've ever made." Marcus looked at his mother with new eyes, seeing not just the woman who'd raised him, but the fierce protector who'd fought through medical school as a single mother, who'd worked double shifts to build their life, who'd never backed down from anything that mattered. "What do we do?" Elena stood, her decision made. "We fight back, but we do it smart, with evidence and strategy, not emotion." She disappeared into the house, returning minutes later with a box of legal documents and her laptop. "I've been through medical malpractice threats before. I know how these campaigns work, and I know how to document everything." As they began organizing their defense, Marcus realized that the twins had made a critical miscalculation. They'd assumed that destroying a teenager's business would be simple, that his family lacked the resources, connections, and determination to fight back. But they'd just declared war on a woman who'd spent decades saving lives under pressure, who'd built a career on making life-or-death decisions with incomplete information, and who'd raised her son to never surrender in the face of injustice. Elena pulled up the hospital's internal investigation portal, beginning to document every aspect of her perfect record. "Marcus, I want you to call every client you've ever worked for. Get written testimonials about your service quality. Document everything. Will it be enough?" Elena looked at her son with the confidence of... Elena Chen had learned long ago that in high-stakes battles, preparation was everything. By 6 a.m. Wednesday morning, she'd transformed their dining room into a war room, complete with timeline charts, contact lists, and evidence folders organized with military precision. "First rule of emergency medicine," she told Marcus over coffee, "stabilize the patient before treating the symptoms. We need to stop the bleeding before we can heal the wounds." Marcus nodded, still reeling from the previous day's devastation, but energized by his mother's tactical approach. She'd stayed up until 3 a.m. documenting every aspect of their situation, and her thoroughness was both impressive and terrifying. "I've identified our immediate priorities," Elena continued, consulting her notes. "Medical board hearing is Friday. Business licensing investigation starts Monday. We have exactly 5 days to build our defense and launch our counteroffensive." "Counteroffensive?" Elena's smile carried the predatory edge of someone who'd been underestimated once too often. "Honey, They made this a war. Wars aren't won by defending. They're won by making your enemy regret starting the fight. Her phone rang at precisely 7 a.m. Dr. Chen? This is Attorney Sarah Martinez, no relation to the police officer. Your colleague, Dr. Peterson, gave me your number. I understand. You're facing some baseless accusations? Elena had called in favors overnight, reaching out to medical professionals she'd worked with over 2 decades. Dr. Peterson, the chief of emergency medicine, had been outraged by the anonymous complaint and immediately recommended Martinez, who specialized in defending healthcare professionals against fraudulent claims. Sarah, thank you for calling so early. Yes, we're dealing with what appears to be a coordinated attack designed to destroy my son's business and my career. I've seen this pattern before, Martinez said grimly. Wealthy individuals using the complaint system as a weapon when they can't get their way through normal channels. The good news is that false accusations usually collapse under scrutiny. The bad news is that damage can be done before truth prevails. What do we need to do? Document everything, but also investigate the accusers. People who file false complaints rarely limit themselves to one target. If we can establish a pattern of abuse, we can turn defense into prosecution. After ending the call, Elena turned to Marcus with renewed determination. We're going to need help, and I know exactly where to get it. An hour later, they were sitting in the modest office of Detective Ray Castellanos, Elena's former patient whose life she'd saved during a heart attack 2 years earlier. Castellanos listened intently as they explained the situation, his expression growing darker with each detail. Doc, what you're describing sounds like criminal harassment and conspiracy, he said finally. Filing false complaints with government agencies is a felony. If we can prove coordination and intent, this becomes a serious crime. Can you help us? Marcus asked. Castellanos leaned back in his chair, considering. Officially, I can't investigate without formal complaints and evidence. Unofficially, I can guide you toward resources that might be helpful. He pulled out a business card. This is Rebecca Torres, private investigator. She specializes in social media forensics and digital evidence. If these women have been coordinating their attacks online, Torres can find the paper trail. Elena pocketed the card. What about the immediate threats? The medical board, the business licensing? Fight them head on, Castellanos advised. But also start building your own case. If they've done this before, there will be victims. Find them, document the pattern, and we can flip this entire situation. Meanwhile, across town, Karen and Sharon Harrison were enjoying what they believed was their inevitable victory. They sat in the Blackwoods breakfast nook, scrolling through social media and savoring the destruction they'd orchestrated. Look at this, Sharon said, showing her sister a next-door post from Patricia Hendricks warning neighbors about aggressive contractors. 23 comments already, all thanking Patricia for the warning. Karen smiled with satisfaction. And I just got confirmation from my friend at the medical board. Elena Chen's investigation is moving forward. They're taking the complaints very seriously. What about the business licensing? Emergency review scheduled for Monday. With multiple complaints from different sources, they'll have no choice but to revoke his license. The twins had spent decades perfecting the art of consequence-free destruction. They'd destroyed PTA presidents who challenged their authority, ruined small business owners who didn't provide adequate deference, and ended careers of anyone who dared to suggest they might be wrong about anything. But they'd never faced an opponent like Elena Chen. At 10 a.m., Elena and Marcus met with Rebecca Torres, whose reputation for digital investigation had made her the go-to resource for attorneys dealing with sophisticated harassment campaigns. Show me everything, Torres said, settling behind a bank of monitors that would have impressed NASA Mission Control. Elena laid out the timeline, the pool maintenance incident, the immediate social media campaign, the anonymous complaints, and the rapid escalation. Torres listened while simultaneously running searches on the twins' names. Interesting, Torres murmured, studying her screens. Karen and Sharon Harrison have very active digital footprints, multiple social media accounts, extensive networking groups, and... Oh, this is fascinating. What did you find? Torres turned her monitor toward them. Evidence of previous campaigns. Look at this Facebook thread from 6 months ago. They're coordinating complaints against a landscaping company. Same pattern. Multiple neighbors filing simultaneous reports, anonymous regulatory complaints, social media character assassination. Marcus leaned forward, studying the posts. Did the landscaper survive it? According to public records, Ramirez. Landscaping filed for bankruptcy 4 months later. Torres continued typing. And here's another one from last year, a house cleaner named Maria Santos. Look at the language patterns in these posts. She highlighted text from multiple accounts, showing identical phrases and coordinated timing. This isn't organic community concern. This is systematic destruction. Elena felt a cold fury building as she realized the scope of what they faced. How many people have they done this to? Torres's fingers flew across her keyboard. Based on preliminary analysis? At least 6 businesses in the past 2 years, possibly more. They have this down to a science. Can we contact the previous victims? Already working on it. But Elena, there's something else you need to see. Torres pulled up a private Facebook group called Willowbrook Elite, accessible only to the twins and their closest allies. The recent posts were a goldmine of incriminating evidence. Look at this thread from yesterday, Torres said, reading aloud. Phase 1 complete. Pool boy's reputation destroyed. Mother's career in jeopardy. Phase 2. Ensure business license revocation and medical board suspension. Phase 3. Civil lawsuit for emotional distress. By the time we're finished, they'll wish they'd never challenged us. Marcus stared at the screen in shock. They're treating this like a game. Not a game, Elena corrected grimly. A business model. They destroy people for entertainment. Torres saved everything to secure drives. This is enough to prove coordination and intent. Combined with the previous victims, you've got a federal case for criminal conspiracy. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Martinez. Emergency meeting, medical board hearing moved to tomorrow. They're fast-tracking your case. They're accelerating the timeline, Elena told Torres. Can you have everything documented by tonight? Already done. But there's something else I found that changes everything. Torres pulled up property records and financial documents. The Harrison twins don't just destroy people for fun, they profit from it. Look at this. In 4 of the 6 previous cases, they or their associates acquired the failed business's contracts and client lists. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. They're not just bullies. They're predators. Exactly. They identify successful small businesses, destroy them through false accusations, then swoop in to collect the assets. Your pool business, your mother's medical career, they're just obstacles to be eliminated. Elena stood, her decision crystallizing. Rebecca, I need everything you've found documented and ready for presentation tomorrow. Sarah Martinez needs to see this before the medical board hearing. What about the previous victims? Marcus asked. Torres smiled for the first time since they'd met. Already contacted 3 of them. They're more than willing to testify. Apparently, they've been waiting years for someone to fight back, They prepared to leave. Torres handed Elena a thick folder. Everything's in here, plus backup drives with digital evidence. But Elena, be careful. People who've built their lives on destroying others don't give up easily. When cornered, they tend to escalate. Elena accepted the folder with the gravity of someone receiving ammunition for a war. Let them escalate. They just picked a fight with someone who spent 20 years keeping people alive under pressure. Tomorrow they're going to learn what real consequences look like. That evening, as Elena and Marcus prepared for the next day's battle, neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been parked across the street for the past 3 hours, or the telephoto camera lens focused on their living room window. The twins hadn't. The California Medical Board hearing room felt more like a courtroom than an administrative proceeding, complete with formal seating, recording equipment, and the kind of institutional gravity that could crush careers with a single decision. Elena Chen sat at the respondent's table in her best Navy suit, flanked by attorney Sarah Martinez, and a stack of evidence that could either save or damn her 23-year career. Across the room, Dr. Richard Pemberton, the board's chief investigator, reviewed the anonymous complaints with the methodical precision of a man who'd seen every variety of professional misconduct. At 62, Pemberton had conducted over 300 hearings, and his reputation for impartiality was matched only by his intolerance for false accusations. "Dr. Chen," Pemberton began, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority, "you stand accused of falsifying patient records, substance abuse during working hours, and gross negligence in patient care. These are serious charges that could result in license revocation and criminal prosecution." Elena met his gaze steadily. "Dr. Pemberton, I categorically deny all charges. More than that, I believe these accusations represent a coordinated attack designed to destroy my career, in retaliation for my son's professional conduct." Pemberton's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite an allegation, Dr. Chen. Do you have evidence supporting this claim?" Sarah Martinez stood, her arms full of documentation. "Dr. Pemberton, with your permission, we'd like to present evidence that these complaints are part of a systematic campaign of harassment and false accusations." "Proceed." Martinez activated a laptop connected to the room's display screen, immediately showing the Facebook posts from the Willowbrook Elite group. "These communications obtained through legal digital investigation show the complainants coordinating their attack on Dr. Chen and her son." The room fell silent as Pemberton read the posts aloud. Phase 1 complete. Pool boy's reputation destroyed, mother's career in jeopardy. Phase 2, ensure business license revocation and medical board suspension. Elena watched Pemberton's expression shift from professional skepticism to barely contained outrage. In 25 years of conducting hearings, he'd never seen such blatant evidence of false accusations being used as weapons. "Dr. Chen," Pemberton said carefully, "are you telling me that these complaints were filed not because of actual misconduct, but as retaliation for an unrelated business dispute involving your son?" "Yes, sir. And we have evidence that this same pattern has been used against at least 6 other families in the past 2 years. Martinez pulled up Torres's comprehensive investigation. "The Harrison twins, Karen and Sharon, have systematically destroyed small businesses through false accusations, then profited by acquiring their client bases and contracts." As if summoned by their names, the hearing room doors opened and Harrison entered with the confidence of someone who owned the building. She was impeccably dressed in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Elena's monthly mortgage, and her smile carried the serene certainty of victory. "Excuse me," Karen said, approaching the bench with practiced authority. "I'm Karen Harrison, one of the concerned citizens who filed complaints about Dr. Chen. I'd like to address these outrageous accusations being made about my character." Pemberton studied her with the expression of a man encountering an exotic but dangerous specimen. "Ms. Harrison, this is a closed administrative hearing. You don't have standing to participate unless you're representing yourself as the complainant." "Of course I'm representing myself. These wild conspiracy theories need to be addressed before they mislead this proceeding." Martinez stood immediately. "Dr. Pemberton, Ms. Harrison's presence here confirms our assertion that these complaints were personal, not professional. A legitimate complainant would allow the system to work without interference." Karen's composure cracked slightly. I have every right to ensure that dangerous medical professionals are held accountable. Dangerous? Elena spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the controlled fury of someone who'd spent years saving lives only to be accused of endangering them. Ms. Harrison, you've never met me, never been my patient, never witnessed my medical practice. On what basis do you claim I'm dangerous? Your son, my son, Elena interrupted, standing slowly, identified a legitimate safety hazard on your sister's property. A hazard confirmed by police investigation and documented by structural engineers. Your response was to try to destroy both our careers. Pemberton held up his hand for silence. Ms. Harrison, I'm going to ask you to leave this hearing immediately. Your presence is irregular and potentially prejudicial. You can't dismiss me like some common... I can, and I am. Pemberton's voice carried the finality of a judicial order. Security will escort you out if necessary. Karen's mask of civility finally shattered completely. This is ridiculous. You're all being manipulated by a teenager and his mother. We're respected members of this community, and we won't be treated like criminals. Ms. Harrison, Pemberton said with deadly calm, the evidence presented suggests that you and your sister have committed felonies by filing false complaints with government agencies. I'm ordering an immediate investigation into your conduct. The color drained from Karen's face as the reality of her situation became clear. For the first time in her privileged life, she was facing real consequences for her actions. Furthermore, Pemberton continued, Dr. Chen's case is dismissed with prejudice. The evidence clearly shows these complaints were fabricated as part of a harassment campaign. Elena felt tears of relief threatening, but she maintained her composure as Pemberton continued. Dr. Chen, on behalf of the California Medical Board, I apologize for the distress these false accusations have caused. Your record remains spotless, and we'll be forwarding this entire matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. As Karen was escorted from the building by security, Elena finally allowed herself to breathe, but her relief was tempered by the knowledge that this was only one battle in a larger war. Outside the hearing room, Detective Castellanos was waiting, with news that would prove even more significant. Doc, we just arrested Sharon Harrison, he said without preamble. Caught her red-handed breaking into your house. Elena stared at him in shock. What? Neighbors called in a burglary in progress. Patrol units responded and found Sharon inside. Your home, photographing documents and planting what appears to be illegal drugs in your bedroom. The magnitude of the twins' desperation became clear. Faced with exposure of their systematic campaign, they'd escalated to breaking and entering, evidence planting, and attempted frame-up. Is Marcus okay? He's fine. He was at school when it happened, but Elena, there's more. We found communications on Sharon's phone coordinating with Karen about planting evidence that will stick. They were planning to call in an anonymous tip about drugs in your house. Elena closed her eyes, processing how close they'd come to complete destruction. If Sharon had succeeded in planting drugs and calling in the tip, Elena's medical license would have been revoked permanently, and Marcus's business would have been finished forever. They really thought they were untouchable, Elena said quietly. People like that usually do, Castellanos replied, until they meet someone who fights back harder than they attack. As they walked toward the parking garage, Elena's phone buzzed, with a text from Marcus. Mom, something amazing just happened. 3 of my old clients called to apologize and rehire me. Word is spreading that the twins are being arrested. I think we won. Elena smiled, but she knew the victory was more complex than Marcus realized. They hadn't just won, they'd exposed a systematic campaign of destruction that had ruined multiple families and would now face federal prosecution. Sarah Martinez caught up with them at Elena's car. Elena, I just got word from the district attorney's office. They're filing RICO charges against the twins. Conspiracy, mail fraud, filing false reports, extortion. This is going to be a major case. What about the other victims? They're all coming forward now. The landscaper, the house cleaner, the previous pool contractor. 6 families total. The twins are looking at decades in federal prison. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. By fighting back, she'd not only saved her own family, but potentially prevented the twins from destroying others. There's one more thing, Martinez added. The twins' financial records show they've profited over $200,000 from their scheme. Civil forfeiture will recover those funds for distribution to victims. As Elena drove home, she reflected on the past 3 days. The twins had chosen their victims carefully. Small business owners without resources to fight back, immigrants afraid of government attention, people who couldn't afford attorneys or investigators. But they'd made one crucial miscalculation. They'd attacked a mother who'd spent decades making life-or-death decisions under pressure, who'd fought her way through medical school as a single parent, who'd never backed down from anything that threatened her son. Elena pulled into her driveway to find Marcus waiting on the front steps, his face bright with relief and pride. As she hugged her son, she realized that the twins had taught them both something valuable about the nature of true strength. It wasn't about money or connections or social posse. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles buzzed with an energy that had nothing to do with typical white-collar crime proceedings. The Harrison twins' trial had become a symbol of something larger, the moment when victims of systematic privilege abuse finally fought back and won. Marcus Chen sat in the gallery's front row, wearing the same navy suit he'd purchased for his high school graduation. Beside him, Elena maintained the composed dignity that had carried her through 23 years of medical emergencies and one very personal war. Behind them, the courtroom filled with faces that told a story of collective justice. Maria Santos, the house cleaner whose American dream had been shattered by false immigration reports. Roberto Ramirez, the landscaper who'd lost everything to coordinated complaints. And 4 other small business owners whose lives had been systematically destroyed for the crime of existing in the twins' social orbit. At the defendants' table, Karen and Sharon Harrison looked nothing like the imperious women who'd once commanded yoga mats and social hierarchies with equal authority. 6 months in federal custody awaiting trial had stripped away their designer armor, leaving behind 2 middle-aged women in orange jumpsuits, their identical faces marked by the kind of fear that comes from finally facing consequences. Judge Margaret Rivera, a woman whose own journey from public defender to federal bench had taught her to recognize both privilege and its abuse, called the court to order with a gravity that silenced even the overflow crowd in the hallway. The United States versus Karen Harrison and Sharon Harrison, she announced. Charges of conspiracy under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, mail fraud, filing false federal reports, extortion, and criminal harassment. Assistant U.S. Attorney David Chen, no relation to Marcus and Elena, despite the surname coincidence that had amused courthouse reporters, approached the bench with the confidence of a prosecutor holding an unbeatable hand. Your Honor, over the course of this trial, we have presented overwhelming evidence that the defendants operated a systematic campaign of destruction, targeting small business owners and working families. They weaponized government agencies, social networks, and regulatory systems to destroy lives for profit and entertainment. Elena squeezed Marcus's hand as Chen continued, his voice carrying the weight of 6 families suffering. The defendants didn't just commit crimes, they industrialized cruelty. They turned other people's dreams into their own personal entertainment, treating human destruction like a game with points and scores. Karen's attorney, an expensive suit named Bradley Whitmore, who'd clearly lost enthusiasm for his clients. Case somewhere around the 3rd week of damning evidence rose with visible reluctance. Your Honor, my clients maintain that their actions were those of concerned citizens attempting to protect their community from what they perceived as legitimate threats. Judge Rivera's expression could have frozen lava. Mr. Whitmore, we've heard 6 days of testimony about Facebook groups dedicated to coordinating false complaints, financial records showing profit from destroyed businesses, and recorded conversations. Planning evidence planting. At what point does concerned citizenship become organized crime? Whitmore had no answer, and his silence spoke volumes. The prosecution had been devastating in its thoroughness. Rebecca Torres had testified about the digital paper trail that read like a manual for systematic destruction. Detective Castellanos had walked the jury through Sharon's arrest in Elena's bedroom, caught red-handed with planted drugs and burglary tools. Most powerful of all had been the victims themselves, each telling stories of lives shattered by whisper campaigns and false accusations. Maria Santos had testified through tears about losing her cleaning business and nearly being deported over false reports. Roberto Ramirez had described watching his family's landscaping company crumble under coordinated complaints, then seeing the twins' associate acquire his client contracts at bankruptcy auction prices. But it was Elena's testimony that had truly sealed the twins' fate. "They didn't just attack my career," she had said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was describing. "They attacked the very foundation of who I am, a mother, protecting her child, a doctor sworn to do no harm, a woman who built her life on truth and service. They tried to destroy us because my 17-year-old son had the audacity to prioritize safety over their egos." Now, as Judge Rivera prepared to deliver sentence, the courtroom held its collective breath. "Karen Harrison and Sharon Harrison," the judge began, her voice carrying the authority of justice itself. "You have been found guilty on all counts. In 30 years on the bench, I have rarely encountered defendants who showed such calculated disregard for human dignity." Karen started to speak, but Judge Rivera silenced her with a look that could have stopped traffic. "You turned other people's livelihoods into your personal entertainment. You used your privilege as a weapon to destroy families who committed no crime beyond existing in your proximity and refusing to be intimidated by your sense of entitlement." Sharon began crying, not the elegant tears of someone seeking sympathy, but the desperate sobs of someone finally understanding the magnitude of their actions. "The court finds that your crimes were not isolated incidents of poor judgment, but elements of an ongoing criminal enterprise designed to profit from human suffering. Karen Harrison, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised probation. Sharon Harrison, you received the same sentence." The courtroom erupted in a mixture of gasps, applause, and tears. Marcus felt his mother's hand tighten in his, but when he looked at her face, he saw not triumph, but something deeper. The quiet satisfaction of justice served. Judge Rivera wasn't finished. "Additionally, the court orders full restitution to all victims, totaling $437,000, representing both direct financial losses and punitive damages. Your assets will be liquidated to satisfy these judgments." Elena leaned forward slightly as the judge continued. "Furthermore, this court is recommending federal legislation inspired by this case, what we're calling the Chen Protection Act, to criminalize the systematic abuse of government complaint, systems for personal vengeance." As the twins were led away in handcuffs, their identical faces showing identical despair, Elena felt a complex mixture of emotions. Justice had been served, but 6 families had still suffered years of unnecessary pain. Victory felt less like celebration and more like the end of a long illness. Outside the courthouse, the gathering felt more like a wake than a celebration. The victims embraced each other with the solidarity of survivors, sharing phone numbers and promises to stay in touch. Marcus found himself standing beside Roberto Ramirez, whose landscaping business had been slowly rebuilding over the past months. "Your mother," Roberto said quietly. "She saved all of us. If she hadn't fought back, those women would still be destroying families." Marcus nodded, watching Elena speak with Maria Santos about a possible cleaning contract at the hospital. His Mother had become something of a local hero, but she wore the attention uncomfortably, preferring action to acclaim. Detective Castellanos approached with news that provided the final piece of closure. The FBI investigation found evidence of similar schemes in Phoenix, Seattle, and Dallas, he reported. The twins weren't just local predators. They were part of a wider network of what the Bureau is calling privileged predators. This case is spawning investigations across 5 states. Elena absorbed this information with the steady calm that had defined her throughout the ordeal. More victims, more suffering, more lives rebuilt from wreckage, but also more justice, more exposure, more protection for future targets. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus and Elena found themselves alone on the courthouse steps, looking out over a city that had witnessed both the worst and best of human nature. "Do you think it was worth it?" Marcus asked quietly. "All the pain, all the fighting?" Elena considered the question with the thoroughness that had made her an excellent doctor. "Honey, I learned something during this whole ordeal. Evil doesn't announce itself with horns and pitchforks. It comes dressed in designer clothes, speaking in reasonable voices, hiding behind social positions and community connections." She gestured toward the courthouse behind them. "Those women could have kept destroying lives indefinitely if someone hadn't fought back. The question isn't whether it was worth it. The question is how many families we saved by stopping them." Marcus looked at his mother with new understanding. She hadn't just been protecting him. She'd been protecting everyone the twins might have targeted in the future. "Besides," Elena added with a slight smile, "you should see your business numbers. 12 new clients this month, and 3 competitors have asked to refer overflow work to you." It was true. The publicity from the trial had transformed Marcus from local pool boy to symbol of young entrepreneurship fighting against privilege abuse. His appointment book was full for the next 6 months, and he'd had to hire 2 part-time assistants. More importantly, the Chen family had discovered something about themselves that would shape their future. When faced with seemingly impossible odds, they didn't just survive. They prevailed through preparation, determination, and an unshakable commit.